Mitch, where the hell did $50,000 go? I could hardly keep my voice steady. My heart pounded as I stood in our kitchen, glaring at Mitch, my husband of 25 years. He looked up from his newspaper, a dismissive smile playing on his lips. "Oh, that? Don't worry about it, Laura. It's handled," he replied. "Handled?" I echoed, incredulity raising my voice an octave. "This is Jonathan's college fund we're talking about. Handled how?" Mitch folded his newspaper with an exaggerated calmness, leaning back as though he had all the time in the world. I needed to make an investment. Something that could benefit us in the long run. "An investment?" I repeated, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. "Mitch, this isn't your personal piggy bank. You didn't even discuss it with me." He shrugged, his nonchalance hitting me like a physical blow. "I make the financial decisions in this house, Laura. You know that." I felt the tears of frustration welling up but forced them back. "We've been saving that money for Jonathan for years. You can't just—" "I can, and I did." End of discussion. He reached for his coffee with the air of someone closing a tedious conversation. I took a deep breath, trying to find a hint of the man I'd fallen in love with decades ago. "Mitch, why are you doing this? You know how important this is for Jonathan, for us." He finally met my gaze, his expression hardening. "I'm doing what's best for this family, Laura. You just can't see it." I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped back. "This isn't just about the money, Mitch. It's about trust, respect. You've crossed a line." "Oh, spare me the lecture," he said, scoffing. "You think struggling to pay bills is respect? You think letting our son go to some second-rate college is trust?" "Jonathan deserves better," I exclaimed. "We all do." "What he deserves is a father who makes smart choices," Mitch retorted. "Not a mother who's too emotional to understand financial realities." His words cut deep, and I felt a desperate need to escape this suffocating conversation. I grabbed my coat and keys in a fumbling rage. "I'm going out." "Fine, have fun sulking," he called after me as I slammed the door. The cold evening wind numbed my cheeks as I walked down the street aimlessly. My mind raced, heart aching with too many unresolved questions. How had it come to this? How had Mitch become someone I barely recognized? I reached for my phone and dialed Eve's number. She answered almost immediately, her familiar, warm voice a balm to my frayed nerves. "Laura, what's wrong?" "Eve," I said, my voice cracking, "Mitch took $50,000 from our savings. For some investment. He didn't even—" "$50,000? Are you serious?" she interrupted, the shock evident in her tone. "That's for Jonathan's college." "I know," I said, the gravity of our situation pressing down on me again. "I don't know what to do." "Come over," she urged. "We need to talk about this. You shouldn't be alone right now." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, feeling a small spark of relief. "Okay, I'm on my way." As I walked to Eve's house, I knew that ignoring the problem would no longer work. Mitch's unilateral decision made me realize just how fractured our family had become. Something needed to change, and it needed to happen soon. I knocked on Eve's door, my hands trembling slightly. She opened it almost immediately and pulled me into a warm hug. "Laura, come in. Let's sit and talk." We moved to her cozy living room, and she handed me a cup of tea. I took a sip, feeling the warmth spread through my body. "Tell me everything," she urged, her eyes filled with concern. I took a deep breath. "I found out this morning that Mitch withdrew $50,000 from our savings for some so-called investment." Eve's eyes widened. "That's for Jonathan's college. How could he just take it without consulting you?" I shook my head, frustration bubbling up again. "He thinks he can do whatever he wants. He's been this way for years, Eve. It's just gotten worse." She leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "Laura, you need to start looking out for yourself. This isn't just about money. It's about respect and trust." I nodded, her words resonating deeply. "You're right. I can't keep letting him control everything, but I don't even know where to start." Eve squeezed my hand. "We'll figure it out. You're not alone in this." Just then, Jonathan walked in, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Mom, you've been crying. What's wrong?" I forced a smile, trying to keep my composure. "It's just been a rough day, sweetie." He looked at Eve, then back at me. "Is it Dad again?" I sighed, realizing I couldn't shield him from the truth any longer. "Yes, honey. Your dad took the money we saved for your college." Jonathan's eyes darkened with anger. "What? How could he do that? That's my future he's messing with." Eve spoke up, her voice calm but determined. "Jonathan, we're going to sort this out. Your mom and I have your back." Jonathan nodded, looking more resolved. "I want to help, whatever it takes." Mitch's past actions began to flood my mind. The countless times he'd put himself first, manipulating situations to his benefit. There was the time he borrowed money from our emergency fund to buy expensive golf clubs, promising to pay it back, but never did. Or the countless nights he spent at the bar, using the family budget as his personal allowance. Looking at Eve and Jonathan, I felt a renewed sense of determination. We need to start planning. We can't let him keep doing this. Eve nodded. Agreed, and we need to gather evidence of his behavior. If it comes to a legal battle, you'll need proof. Jonathan pulled out his phone. I can keep track of what he's doing. If he's being sneaky, we'll catch him. Eve smiled. That's the spirit. Laura, start documenting everything. Each time he withdraws money, each manipulation, it all counts. I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. I'll start tonight, and I won't let him steal our future. That's the Laura I know, Eve said, squeezing my shoulder. We spent the next few hours talking, planning, sharing stories of Mitch's selfishness. By the time I left Eve's house, I felt lighter, more in control. Jonathan walked beside me, a silent pillar of support. As we reached home, I knew things were going to change. I was done being passive. Mitch might have started this war, but I was going to end it. The house was eerily quiet when I got home. Jonathan headed to his room, muttering something about homework. I heard the front door creak open and close, signaling Mitch's return. My stomach tightened. Laura, you home? He called out, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. I'm here, I replied, stepping out of the kitchen. I watched him hang up his jacket, the expensive leather one he'd bought without consulting me. Where did you disappear to? I came home to an empty house, he said, a note of accusation in his tone. I needed some time to think, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. I went to see Eve. Mitch rolled his eyes. Of course you did. Did you two have a nice little gossip session? We talked about a lot of things, I said calmly. Including the money you took from Jonathan's college fund. He scoffed. Still harping on about that. I told you it's an investment. And I told you it's not just about the money. It's about trust, I shot back, my voice firmer now. Mitch threw his hands up in exasperation. For God's sake, Laura, stop making a mountain out of a molehill. I'm taking care of the family, and all you do is nag. It's not nagging, Mitch. It's called being responsible, I said, the anger rising in me again. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You're always so high and mighty. Maybe if you'd let me handle things my way, we'd actually get somewhere. I took a step back, unwilling to engage in another pointless argument. I'm going to bed. We can talk about this tomorrow. As I turned to leave, he grabbed my arm, not roughly but enough to make my point clear. We're not done, Laura. Yes, we are, I said, pulling away and heading up the stairs. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and determination. The next morning, Jonathan found me packing a small suitcase. Mom, what are you doing? I looked up at him, resolved. We're leaving, Jonathan. I can't take his bullying anymore. His eyes widened, then set in determination. Okay, Mom, what do we need to do? We need to gather our essentials and some important documents, I explained, and we need to do it quietly. Jonathan nodded, quickly moving to help me. As we packed, I felt a strange sense of liberation washing over me. Mitch's grip on our lives was slipping. A few hours later, Mitch left the house with his golf clubs, no doubt heading for another indulgent afternoon. That was our chance. Mom, we deserve better than this. Let's get out before it's too late, Jonathan urged, his voice steady and reassuring. I looked at him, feeling an immense pride. You're right. Let's go. We packed our things into the car quietly, trying to be as discreet as possible. My heart raced with every minute, but the urgency pushed me forward. As I closed the trunk, I glanced at our house one last time, feeling a bittersweet mix of sorrow and relief. We drove to Eve's house, the silence between us thick with a shared understanding. This was the beginning of something new, something better. As we pulled into her driveway, Eve opened the door, her face lighting up with a welcoming smile. You've got us. Mitch has no idea what's coming for him, she said, ushering us inside. Sitting in Eve's warm, inviting home, I felt the weight of years lift from my shoulders. With Jonathan at my side and Eve's support, I was ready for whatever came next. Mitch had pushed us too far, and now it was our turn to fight back. Eve's living room felt like a safe haven as we sat down to plan our next steps. Peter joined us, his presence calming. He had always been a reliable and supportive figure, a stark contrast to Mitch's unpredictable volatility. Okay, Laura, Eve began, her tone serious but encouraging. We need a game plan. I nodded, grateful for her steadfast support. We need to gather enough evidence to expose Mitch, but we also need a clear escape plan. We can't stay here indefinitely. Peter spoke up, his voice even. I've been thinking about that. Mitch loves controlling the narrative, but if we expose him with proof, he won't have a leg to stand on. Jonathan leaned forward, eager. What kind of proof do we need? Eve smiled at him, her eyes twinkling with determination. Anything and everything. Financial records, emails, anything that shows his reckless spending and deceit. I sighed, thinking about the state of our finances. I've got bank statements and transaction records. He's been careless, thinking I wouldn't notice. Peter nodded. Good. We also need to catch him in the act. If he's planning something big, now's the time. I thought about Mitch's recent behavior, the way he had mentioned taking care of his parents. He's planning a vacation for his parents, probably with the stolen money. Eve's eyes widened. Perfect. If we can prove he's using the college fund for that, it's game over for him. Jonathan looked at me, concern mixed with resolve. Mom, what if he finds out what we're doing? He won't take this lying down. Eve smiled reassuringly. You're with us now. Mitch won't touch you. I squeezed Jonathan's hand, meeting his gaze. We're in this together, and we're not backing down. Peter handed me a small voice recorder. This might come in handy if you need to record any conversations. It's a small step, but every bit counts. I took the recorder, feeling more empowered than I had in years. Thank you, Peter. We'll make sure he doesn't see it coming. Our conversation shifted to logistics. Eve offered their spare room for as long as necessary, and Peter suggested consulting a lawyer who specialized in family law. Most importantly, we crafted a timeline for gathering evidence and taking action. Later that evening, as Jonathan and I settled into Eve's guest room, there was a sense of newfound hope. The walls were lined with photographs of happier times, a testament to the positive life we were stepping towards. Mitch won't get away with this, Jonathan whispered, his voice resolute. I nodded, feeling the same determination. We'll expose him for who he really is. This is just the beginning. The next few days were a blur of covert operations. We managed to secure more documents and even recorded a few suspicious phone calls Mitch had made. Evidence started to pile up, each piece a nail in the coffin of his deceit. On the 5th day, Peter burst into the living room, excitement evident. Laura, I got some information. Mitch booked an extravagant trip to Hawaii for his parents. The payments went through yesterday. Eve grinned. We've got him now? My heart pounded with adrenaline. It's time to confront him, but first, we need to make sure we're protected. Peter nodded. I'll set up a meeting with the lawyer. Once we have legal backing, Mitch won't be able to touch you. As dusk settled in, the plan became clearer. Armed with Eve and Peter's support and Jonathan's determination, I felt more unstoppable than ever. Mitch might have thought he could control our lives, but he was in for a rude awakening. The first battle had been fought in silence, but the next would be loud and undeniable. We had the proof. We had the plan. Now, it was time for action. Are you ready, Laura? Eve asked quietly as we stood in the hallway, our bags packed. I nodded, my heart thumping in my chest. Yes, it's time. Jonathan appeared, carrying his own bag. Dad's out with her, isn't he? He asked, his voice tight with anger. I nodded again, unable to shake the image of Mitch with his mistress, living freely while we planned our escape. We have to move quickly. Eve guided us to the car parked discreetly in the back alley. Let's get you out of here, she said softly, starting the engine. As we drove, the tension eased just a bit. We were leaving the toxic environment behind, but I knew this was only the beginning. Jonathan was silent beside me, his gaze fixed firmly out the window. We pulled into Eve's driveway, and Peter was there to help us unload. You're safe here, he reassured us. We'll take it one step at a time. Inside, the smell of freshly brewed coffee greeted us, and I let out a sigh of relief. We moved our bags into the guest room and gathered in the living room to make final plans. Eve handed me a cup of coffee. So, what's the plan now? First, we need to contact the lawyer, I said, sipping the warm liquid. We need everything ready before facing Mitch. Peter nodded. I've already set up a meeting. We'll go there first thing tomorrow morning. Jonathan leaned forward, determination etched on his face. What if Dad comes looking for us? He'll be furious. Eve put a comforting hand on his shoulder. He won't hurt you, Jonathan. We'll make sure of it. And once we've confronted him with everything, he'll have no choice but to back down. The next morning, armed with folders of evidence, we headed to the lawyer's office. The meeting was intense but productive. Our lawyer, Mr. Jennings, was confident. This is more than enough to take legal action. Mitch won't have a leg to stand on. Back at Eve's house, preparations continued. Peter had gathered more information about Mitch's secret plans, and each piece fell perfectly into our puzzle. Jonathan and I were packing up for the day when Eve knocked softly on the door. "Can I come in?" "Of course," I said, trying to muster a smile. Eve sat beside me, her eyes filled with warmth. "Tomorrow's the big day. Are you ready?" "Ready as we'll ever be," I replied, squeezing her hand. Jonathan looked at us, his resolve unwavering. "Mom, we need to be strong. We can do this." I hugged him, feeling a surge of pride. "Yes, we can." The following morning, Mitch's face was a mask of confusion as he walked into our lawyer's office, only to see Jonathan and me sitting there. "Laura, what the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice full of rage. "This," I said, holding up the folder of documents, "is evidence of every lie, every theft, and every betrayal." "We're done, Mitch." He glanced at the papers, his face going pale. "You can't do this. You're nothing without me, Laura." I stood up, my voice unwavering. "You're wrong, Mitch. We're stronger than you ever thought possible. We're done being your victims." Mr. Jennings stepped in. "Mr. Clark, you will be served with divorce papers and a lawsuit for the unauthorized withdrawal of funds. I suggest you prepare." Mitch's fury was palpable. "You can't take my family away from me." Jonathan stepped forward, his voice cold. "You did that yourself, Dad. Now it's time for you to face the consequences." Leaving the office, I felt a sense of liberation. Mitch wouldn't control us any longer. As we drove back to Eve's, I turned to Jonathan. "We did it. We took our first real step to freedom." He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's just the beginning, Mom. We have a lot more to look forward to." As we arrived at Eve's, the sun breaking through the clouds felt like a sign. The worst was over, but the best was yet to come. We had reclaimed our lives, and now it was time to rebuild. Mitch's face twisted in anger as he stormed into Eve's house, his knuckles white from clutching the divorce papers. He had found us sooner than we anticipated. "You think you can just leave me and get away with this?" he shouted, eyes wild with fury. Eve stepped forward, blocking his way to me and Jonathan. "Calm down, Mitch. You've lost the right to make demands." "Out of my way, Eve," Mitch snarled, his voice low and threatening. "Laura, get over here. We're going home." I stood my ground, my pulse racing. "No, Mitch, we're not going anywhere with you." Jonathan came to my side, his expression defiant. "Dad, you need to leave. You're not scaring us anymore." Mitch looked between us, his face contorting in disbelief. "You've poisoned him against me," he spat, glaring at me. "You're tearing this family apart." Eve's husband, Peter, stepped out of the kitchen, his presence reassuring. "Mitch, you need to go. Laura and Jonathan are staying here, and there's nothing you can do about it." Mitch's hands shook, his eyes darting around the room. "You think you can hide behind them forever? This isn't over, Laura. Not by a long shot." "Enough, Mitch," I said, my voice strong and unwavering. "You don't control us anymore. You've lied, stolen, and betrayed our trust. It's over. We're done." Eve moved to stand beside Peter, their united front a stark contrast to Mitch's isolated fury. "Get out, Mitch," Eve said calmly, "before we call the police." His face flushed with anger. Mitch took a step back. "This isn't the end. I'll make sure you regret this," he hissed before turning on his heel and storming out the door. The room fell silent, the tension slowly dissipating. Eve turned to me, her eyes soft with concern. "Are you okay?" I nodded, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Yes, we did it." We stood up to him. Jonathan wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "We've got each other now, Mom. That's what matters." Peter handed me a glass of water, his face kind. "You're safe here. Mitch won't hurt you." We settled back into the living room, the weight of the confrontation still hanging in the air. But as we talked, the mood shifted. We began to discuss practical steps for moving forward. Contacting Mitch's employer with evidence of his infidelity, freezing assets, and securing our new life. Eve looked at me with determination. "Laura, you've come so far. Now it's to take the final steps." "We need to expose him," Jonathan said firmly. "He can't keep getting away with this." I felt a surge of resolve. "You're right. We'll go public if necessary. People need to see Mitch for who he really is." With a renewed sense of purpose, we spent the next few hours organizing our evidence, preparing for the next move. Jonathan worked diligently beside me, his commitment a source of strength. As the day turned to evening, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We were no longer living in fear. We were taking control, one step at a time. The phone rang, interrupting our thoughts. Peter answered, his expression shifting to one of concern. He handed the phone to me. It's Mitch. I hesitated but took the phone, my voice steady. What do you want, Mitch? You think you've won? He snarled. This is far from over, Laura. You can't scare us anymore, I replied, my resolve unshaken. We have everything we need to expose you. It's your turn to face the consequences. I'll destroy you, he threatened. I'll make sure you lose everything. No, Mitch, you've already lost. It's time to let go. I hung up the phone, my heart steady. Eve placed a hand on my shoulder. You're stronger than you know, Laura. We're here with you. With my friends by my side and my son's unwavering support, I knew we would face whatever came next. This battle was far from over, but we were ready. The strength of our newly formed bond would see us through. I couldn't sleep that night. Mitch's parting words echoed in my mind, but every time fear crept in, I reminded myself how far we had come. The evidence we'd collected was powerful, and the lawyer assured us we had a strong case. The next morning, we convened in Eve's living room to finalize our next move. The air was thick with anticipation and determination. Peter sat with a laptop, documents spread out before him. Laura, he began, we have emails, financial records, photos, and even the recordings. It's time to make this public. Eve nodded in agreement. We'll release it all online, send notifications to his employer, and ensure the media catches wind. He won't be able to hide. Jonathan looked at me, determination in his eyes. Mom, are you ready for this? It's gonna get messy. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Yes, I'm ready. Let's do this. We spent hours compiling everything, creating a comprehensive file that laid bare Mitch's lies and deception. As we worked, the gravity of the situation became more real, but so did our resolve. Peter sent out the emails ensuring the information reached Mitch's employer and key media contacts. Then with a final click, he posted the file online. It was public now, and there was no turning back. Now we wait, Eve said, her voice a mix of excitement and anxiety. It didn't take long for the backlash to begin. Mitch's phone started ringing off the hook, his colleagues likely calling in shock and disbelief. I watched as the first news article surfaced, detailing the scandal. Later that day, Mitch barged into the house again, his face a mask of fury. You think you can destroy me with lies? He shouted. These aren't lies, Mitch, I said, standing my ground. These are your actions, your choices. Now everyone knows. He stormed forward, pointing a trembling finger at me. You'll pay for this, Laura. You've ruined everything. No, Mitch, I replied calmly. You ruined everything. This is the consequence of your actions. Jonathan stepped between us, his eyes blazing with anger. Dad, leave. You're not welcome here. Mitch's eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with venom. You think you're the hero, Jonathan? You're just a pawn in her game. I choose to stand by my mom, Jonathan shot back, unwavering. Peter stepped beside us. You should go, Mitch. This is the last time you'll come here uninvited. The police will be called if you return. Mitch sneered, but finally turned away, his shoulders slumped. This isn't over, he muttered, leaving the house in a storm of rage. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Mitch's employer suspended him pending investigation. The media delved deeper into the scandal, and the court orders were swiftly put in place, freezing his assets. We watched as Mitch's life unraveled, his power slipping away. My phone buzzed with notifications of support from people who read our story, their words lifting a weight from my chest. It's working, Mom, Jonathan said, scrolling through the messages. People are on our side. Eve embraced me, her eyes shining. You did it, Laura. You took back your life. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. We did it, all of us. That night, as we sat around the dinner table, there was a lightness in the air. We laughed, shared stories, and began to imagine a future without Mitch's shadow looming over us. Peter raised his glass, a toast to our resilience, to new beginnings and a brighter future, he declared. We clinked our glasses, the sound a beautiful melody of hope and renewal. The battle had been tough, but we had emerged stronger, bound by love and unwavering support. As I looked around at Jonathan, Eve, and Peter, I knew this was the start of something wonderful. We had reclaimed our lives, and now we were finally free to live them to the fullest. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Mitch spiraled deeper into his misery. He lost his job, his reputation crumbling under the weight of the scandal. An official letter arrived, confirming his termination and the company's intent to press charges. Mom, did you see this? Jonathan handed me the letter, his eyes wide with surprise. I scanned the page, feeling a mixture of relief and sorrow. Yes, it's finally happening. Mitch is facing the consequences. Eve walked into the room, her expression a mix of pride and concern. He did terrible things, Laura, but this must be hard for you too. I nodded. touched by her empathy. It is, but it's also necessary. We can't keep living in fear. Meanwhile, Mitch's parents, who had always turned a blind eye to his faults, made their stance clear. They disowned him, returning our initial loan and issuing a public statement that further isolated Mitch. Eve read the statement out loud, her voice steady. We are deeply saddened by our son's actions and cannot stand by him. We acknowledge the pain he has caused his family and take steps to rectify the situation. Peter joined us at the kitchen table, holding another document. Laura, you're not going to believe this. Mitch's parents don't want anything to do with him. This means there's no more backing him up financially. As we processed everything, my phone buzzed. Notifications flooded in as our story continued to circulate. Messages of support poured in from people who had faced similar struggles, each one a small beacon of solidarity. Look at this, Jonathan said, showing me a message from a woman who had found the courage to leave her own abusive relationship after reading our story. We're making a difference, Mom. Tears welled up in my eyes. I never thought sharing our pain would help others. It's incredible. Peter suggested, Laura, you should consider public speaking or writing. Your story has the power to help so many people. Eve agreed. You've got a gift, Laura. Use it to turn this pain into power. That evening, we sat down to plan the next chapter of our lives. Jonathan and I decided to move into a new apartment, a place that symbolized our fresh start. The process was smoother than I expected, made easier by the community rallied around us. On the day of our move, I stood in our new living room, boxes piled high, and breathed a deep sigh of relief. Jonathan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. This is it, Mom, our new beginning. I smiled at him, feeling a wave of contentment wash over me. Yes, it is. We've earned this. Back at Eve's, the final pieces of our old life were packed away. You're always welcome here, Eve said, tears glistening in her eyes. We're family no matter what. Thank you for everything, I whispered, hugging her tightly. We couldn't have done this without you. Later, as we settled into our new home, I opened my laptop and started to write. Words flowed easily, each keystroke a step in my healing journey. Jonathan sat nearby, glancing up from his books to offer a smile of encouragement. Weeks turned into months, and our lives took on a new rhythm. I found my voice as a writer and speaker, sharing our story and helping others find their own strength. Jonathan flourished in his studies, his future bright with possibilities. One evening, after a successful speaking engagement, I sat with Jonathan on our balcony, looking out over the city. We've come so far, I said, my voice filled with pride. We have, he agreed, sipping his soda, and we're just getting started. As we watched the sunset, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Mitch's downfall had been a painful journey, but it led us to a place of empowerment and freedom. We were stronger, wiser, and finally free to build the lives we deserved. We're stronger and smarter now, and we're finally free, I said, echoing the feelings in my heart. Jonathan nodded, his eyes reflecting the same hope and determination. Absolutely, Mom. We've got this. And with that, we stepped into our future, knowing that we had conquered our past and were ready for whatever came next.